This happened in the summer. It was about 1 a.m. when I woke up to strange sounds outside my window. I didn't realize what they were because I was half asleep. So I just thought I was imagining things. I was laying facing the window. I tried to go back to sleep, but I couldn't. The sounds wouldn't stop. My window was closed and still I could hear them, and there was someone outside my window talking. I couldn't understand much of what they were saying. I could be wrong though, as I was super sleepy. I was frozen and scared shitless. At this point I knew what was going on, but I was just so shocked. I hoped whoever it was would just go away, but they didn't. I couldn't believe this was happening. I then jumped up from my bed and locked all my windows, and went into my parents' room to wake up my mom. My stepdad also woke up, and I told him someone was outside our house. He went out, and when he came back, said it was a drunk man who had gotten the wrong house and was trying to get in. I can't understand how he mistook our house for his. I just don't believe it. But then he was gone. Stupid drunk man, please don't come to my house. I hope I never have to meet you. At the time this happened, I was 16 and living in a small mountain town. I was driving to one of my friend's house one night after youth group. She lived on the darker, more rural outskirts of town. I was at a stoplight in the middle of town when I see a small bus pulled up behind me. I thought nothing of it because sometimes smaller buses were used for sporting events. I continue about my drive, blaring my music and driving the familiar roads. After 5 minutes later, when things started to get a little bit more rural, I noticed the bus is still there. I was a bit more on high alert because we were far from any schools and it made no sense for a bus to come out this way. Now there weren't many options for twists and turns in this part of town, so I just stayed on my course. Within a minute or so of me getting this bad feeling, the bus starts creeping up and almost touching my bumper. I officially fucking panicked. This was when cell phones weren't awesome like they are now. And of course my Nokia was out of minutes. I started slowing down, hoping this guy would just pass me, but no such luck. Instead, the fucker inside this thing turns off his lights and stays uncomfortably close. I'm getting close to my friends, but I don't want to lead this asshole to her house. I decide to get close enough to her house where I can run there in an absolute emergency. But instead I end up driving around the area to see if I could ditch the bus. I turn into a street about a half a mile from my friend's house, and thank my lucky stars, there's a cop parked on the other side of the street. I look in my rearview mirror in time to see the bus pass. I then notice that the only part that is yellow is the front of the bus. The rest was white with the windows painted over. I made it safely to my friend's house, but Stalker and the murder puss, let's not meet. So I don't know if I should be telling this story since it gives me nightmares whenever I think about it. I am a freshman in high school, and this happened in preschool, so I'm just going to recall what I remember. Every normal day, I would go on the bus. It would always pull up to my stop normally. Usually my bus would be screaming with kids all ready to go to school. I was the quiet one, so when the bus pulled up, something was off. Our bus driver was waving us into the bus, but when I slipped inside, there were no kids at all, literally none. Normally I'm the second to last stop for the bus, so this is very suspicious. This bus driver was different. He looked like he was high off his mind on something. I asked him, why are there no kids? And he said there were no kids and I was the first stop. I refused to get on the bus, and he just kept pestering me to get on the bus, but in a calm voice as he was talking to a child. He was, after all. I did not buy it and then ran inside. His eyes went huge, and he just sped away. Then the real bus actually pulled up a few minutes after him, looking how it always been. What happened I will never forget. The man was never found, and I'm glad there were no more incidents. In the earliest months of 2014, I started dating my current boyfriend. We hit it off immediately, which resulted in me staying at his house multiple nights out of the week. Eventually, I ended up living there, sharing a mobile home with him and his father. The neighborhood itself was fairly creepy, one of those unnamed country areas that branched from a main road. Richard, my boyfriend's dad, would tell me stories about how the entire street was owned by one man, a guy who had gotten old in recent years and let the land go. As a result, the field beside the mobile home was overgrown with weeds and old trees. He also told me about the strange occurrences, of which he attributed to two things: aliens and kids from another neighborhood. Despite his warnings and how creepy the area was, I didn't take him too seriously. After all, his biggest concern was aliens. I was unemployed a short period of time after moving in, which left me alone in the house while Cody, my boyfriend, and his dad worked. I spent most of my days putting in job applications, cleaning up the house, and reading online. I guess you could say that my presence at the house was pretty predictable, which is the only explanation for this occurrence. On a day as unremarkable as any, while I sat reading a book in our bedroom, I heard a car pull into the driveway. The sound was pretty distinctive, considering the area wasn't paved, but rather made up of gravel. Thinking that Cody had come home early from work, I slipped on my shoes and headed to the door, which was on the other side of the house. Before I could reach it, a knock sounded against the glass. The front of our trailer had a sunroom, basically a front porch that is encased with windows, making it so you had to go through two doors before slipping into the living room. Being as paranoid as he was, Richard would usually lock the sunroom door before leaving for work, unless he was in a huge hurry. Still thinking that maybe my boyfriend had come home early from work, I opened the front door to let him in. Only it wasn't Cody at the door, but rather a short Hispanic man. He smiled at me through the glass and nodded, almost as if I was exactly who he'd been expecting to answer. I noticed he had one hand behind his back, the other hanging at his side. I tried not to think too much about it. Behind him in our carport was a small white truck, and I could hear that the engine was still running. "Can I help you?" I tried to make my voice sound as strong as I could, but it could only come out as shaky. "I'm with the garbage company. I'm here to pick up your trash cans." I blinked, knowing immediately that this was a lie. Yes, it was common for the garbage company to come and pick up your trash cans if the bill hadn't been paid. But I had gone with Cody the week before to pay it. Not to mention, the drivers would never knock on the door, they would only just take the cans and leave. I glanced to my left, seeing that our trash cans were still where we always kept them, on the outside of the sunroom, somewhat behind the house. They're right there, If you need them, then take them." This time I made my voice more assertive, causing my visitor's smile to turn into a frown. "Can I come in?" he asked. I didn't verbally answer. I just shook my head. My heart dropped as I watched him reach up and grab the handle to the glass door, pulling on it to open it. The door clicked, obviously locked. The man tried to pull it again, this time harder, causing the metal to creak. I jumped back into the house and slammed the front door, locking it with purpose. It was so quiet in the house that I could only notice two sounds: my heart pounding, and the doorknob to our back door jiggling. There was no way it could have been the guy from the front porch. He wouldn't have had time to get to the back door even if he ran. "I'm calling the fucking police," I yelled through the door, still baffled at the fact that this was all happening in broad daylight. I could hear the truck drive through the carport into our backyard immediately after that. I took a moment to look through the blinds of a window, watching as a separate man jumped off the back porch and into the passenger seat. To this day, I'm convinced that these men knew I was home alone and carefully planned an attack. One of them was meant to distract me while the other broke into the back door. I still don't know what the front door guy had hidden behind his back. All I can say is that I am forever thankful on how paranoid my father-in-law is. Who knows what would have happened if he hadn't locked the sunroom door. My New Year's resolution of 2012 was to get back in shape. After my first kid was born, I had lost my athletic interest, but I had every intention of getting it back. So I started running 4 days a week with my friend Hannah, who was a very great runner and motivator. We would run after work, 5 to 10 kilometers, usually favoring the forest trail. It's the kind of trail that got lightning in the darker months of the year. So you can run there anytime, really. Once you turn on the lights, you got 45 minutes to run the shorter trail and longer to run the longest one. Then the lights shut off automatically. We had been running for 2 months when we started seeing the same man hanging around the parking lot every time we got there. Thin man, about 25 to 30 years of age, always dressed in sports clothes but never actually ran. He never looked you in the eye either. We speculated that he could be a homeless man camping nearby, because he was constantly there. We got used to seeing him, sitting somewhere close by, silently and always on his own. We felt sorry for him. He never seemed to talk to anyone or interact at all, but there was something about him that made us hesitate to talk to him, or ask him if he was okay. Can't pinpoint what it was, but something wasn't completely right with him. One evening, Hannah didn't make it to the run, and I decided to go on my own. I arrived at the parking lot, my car being the only one there. I did some stretching, turned on the lights, and set off on the 5-kilometer trail. I hadn't seen the thin, silent man when I started my run. Perhaps he was getting too cold for him to sit there now that it was autumn, dark, and getting closer to the freezing point. He must have been there, though, somewhere in the shadows, because when I got onto the top of the first steep hill, I could hear heavy breathing somewhere behind me. I looked over my shoulder and I see him. He is running like a man obsessed, in regular shoes, not running shoes, and his arms moving in a strange, stiff manner as if he was made of metal. his hands like arrows, straight and in an upward-inward angle. Sort of like a sprinter, but more extreme, moving like a robot. For the first time he looked at me in the eyes, and it was the eyes of a predatory animal, and it made my heart freeze. He had never done anything to harm me, or anyone else as far as I knew. But the look in his eyes alone was enough to let me know that I was facing a serious threat. I started running faster, trying to create distance between us, and I could hear his heavy breathing getting even more strained. I ran like my life depended on it, adrenaline pumping through my body and giving me new strength. I tore off my necklace and threw it on the ground, thinking I must leave a trace behind if he takes me. Something must be left behind. I tried screaming, hoping someone would be close enough to hear me, but I couldn't scream my lungs out and keep up the phase at the same time. Why is he doing this? What does he want? Who is he? I thought, as I started to feel my lungs burn. Then I thought of my 15-month-old daughter, and ran until I could taste blood in my mouth. He's still behind me, maybe 100 meters behind now, but I figured that if I tripped and fall, or run out of energy, or fumble with my car keys once I reach the parking lot, then I'm screwed. Once I reached the sharp turn on the trail, I went off the trail and ran straight into the dark woods. I ran only a short distance and then I laid down flat on my stomach, my hands searching for a rock to defend myself if he found me. I realized that I was wearing bright running clothes with reflexes and neon coloring. I had never felt so visible in the dark before. I could hear him reach the turn, and thank God he kept on running. I started to slowly and as silently as possible move further into the darkness. My heart sank again as I heard rapid footsteps closing in on the trail. He had realized that I must have gone off the trail once he saw that there was no sign of me ahead. He stopped and I stopped. I could imagine him listening for any sound. I held my breath and begged to a God that I don't even believe in to make him go away. After a while, I heard him say something in a language that I did not recognize and walk off. I didn't move. I feared that he would wait for me by my car, and realized that I had to get off the trail and onto a main road and stop someone. I couldn't go back to the parking lot. I started to make my way further into the woods. Knowing that I would eventually end up on the last part of the long trail, and close to the main road. The lights on the trail suddenly shut off. That made me calmer at first. The darkness was a comfort and protection, but then, after only a few moments, it switched on again. This could only mean that another person had just started their run, and soon I would have someone there to help me. Or that he was out there looking for me, or getting ready to prey on a lonely runner. I decided against waiting to find out, and continued my way towards the main road. It was dark and I fell multiple times, my clothes getting wet from the damp vegetation, and I started to get cold. After what felt like a lifetime, I could see the 10-kilometer trail up ahead, and knew I was close to the main road. Soon I could hear the traffic. Once I made it to the road, I must have looked like I was in a terrible accident, blood from several small cuts from the falling, my clothes dirty and my face, I assume, petrified. My bright runner shirt soon attracted the attention of a passing car. My waving and desperate shouting made it stop. The driver, a 40-ish man with 2 kids in the back seat, spent the next 10 minutes or so trying to make sense of what I was trying to say. Between the sobbing and the crying, He asked if I needed a lift back to the parking lot, and I told him no. Please just take me home instead. At home, my husband insisted on going back to the parking lot to retrieve the car and calling the police. And report what? I asked. No crime had been committed. I just knew that he was out there to get me. My husband went back for the car. The driver's seat window had been smashed and my phone was gone. So was the photo of my daughter that had been hanging from the mirror. I don't know what he was trying to do, or why he was chasing me the way he did. But the look in his eyes, there was no doubt he had bad intentions. Creepy forest man, let's never meet again.